Hello guys, Winston here. With the annual celebration of diabetes coming up here in the States, I decided to do something festive for a change. Carving pumpkins is a classic Halloween activity here, and since I'm pretty awful at anything arts and crafts related, I naturally turned to my CNC. Unfortunately, the stock Shapeoko doesn't have a working area tall enough to accommodate even a conservatively sized pumpkin, so in order to do this project, I had to modify my setup a bit. I took my Shapeoko out of its enclosure and removed the wasteboard. Then, I elevated my Shapeoko's frame with some cinder blocks and MacGyvered a cradle to hold my pumpkin in place. And yes, I did do this outside to save on cleanup. On the computer side of things, I wanted to keep things as simple as possible. While you could totally model an object to carve that conforms to the curvature of your pumpkin or take a 3D scan of something round like your face, I didn't have time to do any of that. I wanted to start and finish this project in one afternoon. My strategy was to carve a feature deep enough to overcome the local curvature of my pumpkin. To create a face that I would machine into my pumpkin, I turned not to Inkscape but to easel, which I haven't really used for any major project yet. I started with a mustache because a strong mustache is always a good conversation starter. Next, I drew two circles 1 inch in diameter for the eyes. To make sure that my face was symmetrical, I used the shape placement feature, choosing to locate the eyes by their center. This placement dialog was an option I was really pushing for an easel because I thought it was a very useful feature that didn't exist anywhere else. MakerCam doesn't give you any sort of numerical precision when placing objects, and Inkscape only lets you place features by their lower left corner, which is completely unnatural in engineering. Circular features like holes are always defined by their center locations in technical drawings. Inventables rolled out precise shape placement functionality after I harassed them about it, so now I can safely recommend using easel for a lot of your basic projects. I decided my pumpkin's face was a little too bland with just eyes and a mustache, so I also threw in a pair of eyebrows. That seemed to complete the face well enough, so I prepared to carve it. I picked the softest material in Easel's database and manually set the cutting depth to 0.25 inches, assuming the pumpkin would yield more easily than wood. I then resized the stock material so I could make a 1 inch deep cut. After exporting the G-code for this job, it was time to carve. Here's where I'm not really satisfied with Easel. You can't center your project at 0, 0. My first reaction with a project like this would be to move the spindle to the center of the pumpkin and start cutting. But since you have to offset everything from the origin in Easel, I had to reverse offset the spindle to start. After manually moving the spindle to the highest point on my pumpkin, I shifted the spindle 2 inches to the left and 1.5 inches in the negative Y direction before resetting the machine 0 point. There was nothing left to do except hit send on the job, and watch in horror as everything went wrong. It's true that pumpkin flesh yields more easily than wood or metal, but I'd forgotten how flimsy my setup was. The end mill was pushing the pumpkin more than it was cutting it. After resetting everything and changing my program to take shallower passes, I tried again. This time, the end mill cut through the pumpkin with just the tiniest bit of deflection. When the program finished, I rinsed off the pumpkin sludge to reveal cleanly cut edges. All in all, I'd say my carving experiment was quite successful. And on that bombshell, it's time to end. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll be back in a couple weeks with a new video that has something to do with paintballing. Also, I had a pumpkin left over and didn't feel like carving it, so yeah, slingshots.